What do you mean what I'm doing? I'm running away. This is a chase sequence. You know, slow mo. No? Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy and today we're looking at chase sequences and how you can incorporate them into your game. Now, just before we start, a heads up, there are lots of different ways in which different systems handle chase sequences. So I'm going to be looking at it more from an overview of what you can do versus perhaps what your mechanics might imply based on the rule system that you're using. Compare the two and see which one contributes to a better experience and then go forth from there. But chase sequences, generally we need to look at what are the mechanics that we're going to be utilizing, what is the narrative that will then come out of that, and which of the two should take precedence, and then finally the speed of it. How fast should chase sequences happen? Should they happen at 30 feet a second or 60 feet a second? I'm joking, of course. That's not the speed at which chase sequences should happen. Chase sequences should happen at the speed that makes them entertaining. They must be made entertaining. If they're not entertaining, then why are we doing them? So let's leap right into it. But before we do, if you find this video useful or helpful, well, hit that like button. And if you want to catch more of these, hit the subscribe button. Of course, there's always that little Goblin Bell you can ring to get reminders of when new videos come out, which is weekly as far as this channel is concerned. Right, on with the chase sequences. Let's look at it mechanically. Now, mechanic-wise, I think the important thing to bear in mind here is that whatever system you are using, there is usually a prescribed mechanical method. Now, some systems are absolutes. They track each inch, each foot, each meter that the character has to run. They advocate that no, you've got to have a map, and in the map you track, well, you ran this far and you double moved, so you get that far. That's incredibly laborious, and all that you're doing is you are reducing your game from being a role-playing game to suddenly being a miniature tabletop game. And that's what's important to bear in mind, I think. Far too often we have mechanics in place which on paper make a lot of sense. But when you actually start to implement them, you get to the point where you're like, now I have to start measuring distances, we have to start counting squares, because that's what a lot of systems advocate. I hate that idea. All it's doing, as I said, is it's just slowing the game down. Another thing that a lot of chase sequences rely heavily on, or a lazy GM will rely heavily on, is the same checks, the same things. And you go, well, if the person is running through an open market square and through a different part of the city, they need to be making agility checks. Maybe it's dexterity or acrobatics. But then they keep asking for the same rolls time and time again. Covered half a mile, covered a mile. How many times are you going to make that check? They're being pursued by city guards or space robots, whatever the system is. How many times do they ask for the same roll? So the most important thing for me when we look at running a chase sequence from a mechanical perspective is to absolutely not track the absolutes. Absolutely, that's a bad idea. Rather, look at it in terms of locations. So if your party is running through a forest, there are different types of locations within a forest. There might be a river. There might be a valley that is in the middle of the forest. There might be thick bracken or bramble that they need to pass through. There might be sparsely populated areas of open little meadows within the forest. But I would look at it as zones rather than per 10 feet of distance covered. Point number one. Point number two, different checks. Yes, of course, it's about your strength, your endurance, your athleticism, your ability to move quickly. That's what a chase sequence is about. I don't do very well in chase sequences in real life because, well, running is not a thing. On the other hand, a character who is incredibly dexterous and very nimble and lithe can be a very good person in a chase. They could also be a very bad person in a chase if they're not very aware of their surroundings, if they're clumsy and the like. So look at what skill sets you have available, look at what roles your system is utilizing, and then try to figure out per zone of map what the character needs to roll in order to succeed in that space, and what the opponents need to roll. Usually a chase is an opposed roll. The party chasing the chased, I suppose. Now, by changing it up, one zone should be, yes, let's make it an endurance check or a running check, or pick your particular skill set that applies. The next zone should be something to do perhaps with perception, with seeing, with perceiving. Another check should perhaps be with stealth, whether they can take a little blind alley, stop short in an alcove within a doorway. Maybe they've run into a market of basket sellers. However you want to play out your different zones, that's the rolls I would make. And I would make a roll per zone as well. Something to think about. And then reduce the number of rolls mechanically. So as I was saying, don't roll every 10 feet or every 50 feet, roll per zone. And that I think is important. And you go, well, how do you determine how many zones need to run through? What if the bad guys and the good guys, or whatever in this particular example, what if they are both succeeding in the roles? How long does the chase run on for? That's when we get to the narrative. The narrative is going to help us to determine that, so the mechanics might not. There is an entirely conceivable situation where neither party ever fails a roll, and so in theory doesn't ever catch the opponent or lose the chasers. There is simply no way to get around it. So what do? Well, that's when we turn to narratives. Now, narratives allow us to look at a whole bunch of things. What outcome do you want? Now, I know this sounds very much like a railroading technique. It sounds like the GM is determining the outcome of the chase before it even starts. And the emphatic answer is yes. Yes, the GM is. Why is that? Because if you're going to just rely on the mechanics, the GM really doesn't have a position within the game. And I can't stress this enough. If it is just a mechanical simulation, the GM is no longer a game master, they're now just an adjudicator. So unless that is the type of game that you're running, which is fantastic, and I thoroughly hope you enjoy your games of simulation, unless you have that kind of situation, you are determining how desperate those guards are to catch the thing that's being chased, how desperate the thing is being chased to get away, what are their moral convictions, what are their decisions and choices. You're choosing all of that as the game master, so why not also choose the outcome? That doesn't mean that you're going to change the dice rolls, it doesn't mean that you're going to change the values to make sure that a specific outcome happens, but if you have in your mind this chase sequence was as a result of player choices and the consequences that went with them, and quite frankly is not really going to keep my game moving forward. If they get captured, then there's a prison break, or there's a major ramification, or it has been established that because of the crime they're being chased for, they will be executed. If those are the outcomes that a chase is going to give you, then I don't see why it isn't in your power to then be able to say, well, I do want them to escape. So I'm going to throw some things in the path that allow for this to happen. Your first few chase rolls, you can be impartial and you can run with, oh, well, whatever happens. But once you start getting to the point where it's like, okay, it's 4 rolls now and everyone's equal and everyone's on the same footing, there needs to be something that's going to end this. That's where your decision comes in. So that's when you up the stakes or you lower the stakes. Now, by upping the stakes and lowering the stakes, they basically two sides of the same coin. Upping the stakes means, okay, players, you really screwed up and you need to face the consequences of your actions. You can't just assassinate the governor in front of 1,000 witnesses and not expect to be chased to the fullest and then persecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That was sloppy play. You didn't even bother to try and hide whilst doing it. You walked up to the governor in broad daylight and shot him. Bad choice. So then you up the stakes. So you make it more difficult for the players to escape. Now, I'm not saying that you suddenly make the rolls more difficult. you're controlling those biomes. Remember, you control the random chaos that is the world. So who's to say that the alley that the players are running down now, remember, this is a conceptual alley because you're not tracking their position specifically on the map. You might have your city map and you've got your different zones. So the players in one zone might cover a mile. In the next zone, they might only cover 500 feet. In the next zone, it might be a mile again, or half a mile, or 10 feet. Your zones are what are important if you're going to use the method I subscribe to. The zone is suddenly now populated with more things than previously expected. So, well, yes, you're running through the market, but today is market day, so the market is filled with people. So now the roll that you have to make is no longer perhaps a simple dodge roll to move between the people. Now you need to make a strength roll to push your way through the people, whereas the guards that are pursuing you don't. They just shout, "Everybody down!" And everyone gets down and out of their way. So you've lowered the stakes for the guards, you've raised the stakes for the player characters. They now have something tougher to do, which maybe allows the mechanics, the dice, to assist you. You haven't changed anything, you've just altered the situation that the characters find themselves in, which necessitates a different kind of roll, or perhaps a different modifier to that roll. Allies. Allies can always help the party. Now, again, if you've decided that the party should escape, perhaps they did something foolish, or one party member did something foolish and it's kind of got consequences for everybody else, and that action really shouldn't have happened in the first place because, again, it's going to derail the entire thing, well, why not have new allies? As the players are running through a biome, if it looks like their rolls are becoming poorly, or if this thing is just going on and on and on and on, well, then who's to say that there isn't someone standing in the doorway who sees that they've been chased and says, "Psst, come in here, I'll hide you from the law." They go inside, it's a new ally, it's someone who now says, well, now you owe me a favor because I saved you from the gods. So there's a little bit of an adventure that comes out of that. You've got a seed which you have now planted with your players. So they go, oh, well, yes, I suppose we do owe him a favor. He did save us. Doesn't matter. You can also bring back old enemies to hinder the party. So instead of the party being able to escape, now remember me? You thought I wouldn't have my revenge. Well, now, look, gods, here they are. Look, here they are. And bzz, tasered. Ha ha, you're now captured. So you have a lot of narrative options to end a chase sequence as dramatically as you started it. I would also advocate within a chase sequence that you mix these up. Sometimes the players have an easier time of it, sometimes the guards have an easier time of it. Sometimes there's help and sometimes there's an enemy, and it could be a mix within the same chase sequence depending on the rolls, because sometimes those dice are just going to do what they're going to do. It's why we love them so much, and your players are going to succeed at avoiding the old enemy. So run around the corner, up the stakes, make it a little bit tougher for them. Okay, they're still going, they're still ahead on the pack. Right, give them an ally, end the chase sequence, and that's it. Don't forget that the ally and enemy applies to the guards or whoever is chasing as well. So that means that an ally would help them. Here, cut through here. You can get ahead of them if you go through the pass. Something like that. Or, why are you following these people? I demand an explanation. Stop right now and tell me what's going on. So there are many ways in which you can control the outcome of a chase sequence. And I think it's important to keep that in mind, because ultimately, when you are looking at a chase sequence that you are adding to your game, whether it happens organically or whether you've planned for it, you've got to bear in mind, what is it doing to your actual role-playing game in terms of your narrative progression, in terms of the speed of your game. So when we talk about a chase sequence, fast, slow, fast is important. 30 minutes or less and end it earlier. Let's unpack that. Let's just explore what that means. Let's go with ended earlier first. Let's go from the bottom upwards. End chase sequences earlier rather than dragging them out. A chase sequence is meant to be a tense moment where the players are either chasing someone that they need to get hold of, or they are being chased by someone. The stakes are high. They will either succeed or they will fail. This is a very binary sort of situation. This isn't a combat where they could be, people could be knocked unconscious, or there's multiple outcomes. This is catch or not. be caught or not. So end it sooner, end it earlier. If you've planned 7 biomes and by biome 3 you've already done 20 rolls and it's taken you 4 days to just make that check, please end it for the sake of yourself and for the sake of your players. There's no point in dragging this stuff out. It really isn't necessary. You really don't want to do that. So end it earlier. A chase sequence shouldn't be longer than 30 minutes either. If you are running a chase sequence and it's more than 30 minutes, it needs to be the most epic chase sequence that you have ever run in your entire existence. And those biomes need to be so varied that it is basically Hades chasing Hercules out of hell, and that you go from hell all the way up into heaven, having chased through the planet, through life, through death. It needs to be spectacular. If you look at one of the greatest chase sequences that we have, the car chase sequence in Hollywood films and things, the longest one on record is in a film called Ronin with Robert De Niro and a whole bunch of other really good European actors. That was a 20-minute car chase sequence. That's a long time of screeching tires, and they were driving through this poor little European city, downstairs, upstairs, through passageways, under trucks, over trucks, onto trucks, around trucks. They tried to throw everything in, and it still is a little bit dull after a while. Other chase sequences that you can think of, the classic escape from Tatooine by the Millennium Falcon. It escapes from Tatooine and then it's got to go somewhere else, or the escape from Hoth, where again the Millennium Falcon slips past Star Destroyers, sneaks through Star Destroyers, then gets into an asteroid field, sneaks through the asteroid field and has to hide in the asteroid field. And once that's done, when they're then escaping from the asteroid field, it's very simple. They just jump away and it's done. So that is a good example of ending it when it needs to end and not dragging it out forever. You don't want that to happen. Now let's look at this pacing idea of fast, slow, fast. Fast, slow, fast. What that means is, in a good chase sequence where the entire thing feels like this movie escapade, you want a fast, slow, fast pacing. What that means is your first biome needs to be fast. So it's lots of chasing, lots of action, swords being thrown, crossbows being fired, the characters ducking and dodging and weaving and making rolls and being all dramatic. Then the next zone, the next biome, the next whatever you want to call it, the next zone that they're going to go into, that needs to slow down. And perhaps there's a delicate moment with a little orphan that they run past, and the orphan says, "I hope that you get away." And then they throw their teddy bear at the guards to try and distract the guards momentarily. And one of the players swoops back, picks up the teddy bear and gives. Let it slow down. Let the guards, let whoever's chasing or whoever's being chased, let them slow it down a little bit. Give the characters a moment to talk between them. Why did you shoot at the thing? Why did you shoot at the thing? What, you know? And then the next zone, the next phase should be fast pace, go, go. And then slow again. Now, why? Why am I advocating that? Well, what it does is, firstly, it makes your chase sequence a lot more dynamic. It also gives your players an opportunity to go, whoa, this is intense. This chase, oh my goodness. Okay, have we got a breathing moment? Yes, we do. Okay, and breathe. And guards, and run. So it creates comparable situations. And that's something that we're going to talk about in another video coming up if you want to. But creating comparable situations allows for us to compare this situation to that situation. And if they're the same, they become one, they blend into each other, and we don't really get a sense of what they are. So a hectic pace, if you maintain it for a long time, just becomes the pace. A slow pace, if you maintain it for a long time, is just the pace. In order for us to differentiate, to feel as if there are differences, we have to make comparable situations where we can say, that was fast, that was slow, that was fast, that was great, that was brilliant. So when we look at chase sequences, there's so much more to it than just the mechanics. There's so much more to it than just plotting out one square on the map, one square on the map, one square on the map. Zones. Zones are the way to go. I'm not saying it, but zones. Zones. You need zones. Get some zones into your chase sequences. Make them fast, make them slow, make them fast. Slow-mo. You don't have to do that. You probably shouldn't. Shouldn't do that. Yeah, probably. Right, if you haven't checked it out, rpgtablefinder.com, which is the group finder, group maker that we made for you guys, coded by our very own web goblin, interfered with by me, has now updated, and you should check it out. The reason why we say that is because it now has events. So if you have little microcons, or if you have a store and you want to run some events where you've got different tables and things, RPG Table Finder will now do that. So not only will you be able to find players in your local area who can come through to your event, but you will now be able to manage your event in terms of table allocation, pre-registration, handling the booking, directing people to websites and things. So that function has now been added courtesy of the Web Goblin. It is super exciting if you are in that space. Even if you have 3 tables, it's sometimes useful to be able to allocate people to those tables before they arrive. Take the headache out of the problem, and just having a fun eventing experience. Anyway, until next time, from me, I wish you the happiest of gaming. Still nothing? Nothing? No? You didn't like that? Oh. I didn't either, to be perfectly honest with you. That's more running than I've done in a year. But I do subscribe to the idea of slow-mo. No, I don't either. Someone ring the bell. Is this time up yet? Time up? Done? Okay. I'll just go and grab my coffee.